You're watching Maverick Media. Educate, organize, act.
I've felt a lot of anger and frustration over the last 8 years. I'm sure you have too. But that's not what motivates us ultimately. That's not what helps us empathize with our brothers and sisters that are in bondage. That's not what helps the CCR lawyers and the CCR staff connect with people in Guantanamo. It is really about connecting with the humanity, the common humanity that we have, and how humanity gets trounced and how it gets trampled in the face of what looks like absolute power. And I want to talk with you a little bit this evening from our perspective of what absolute power looked like and looks like in the context of Guantanamo. Before I start, I want to send greetings from a longtime sister of Ventura, California, Alice McGrath, who is a very good friend of the Center's, a very good friend of mine. She was not able to be here tonight. I know that she would like very much to be connected with you all if she could, so I send greetings on her behalf. I also want to send greetings on behalf of a number of people who you may or may not have heard of. One person is Gitanjali Gutierrez, Wells Dixon, Shane Cadadal, Pardis Cabrier, Annie McLean, these are the lawyers that are involved in the Guantanamo litigation now. And these are the people that are now spending just about every waking moment, either at the base in Guantanamo or in Washington, D.C., fighting for the rights of the men that are in Guantanamo. Let me take you a step back to 2002. January 11th, 2002, George Bush flew the first 20 men from around the world into Guantanamo. And when he did that, he said, "These are the worst terrorists you will ever see in your life. These men will bite your heads off, they will take away your kids, they're responsible for September 11th, but you don't have to worry because the president's going to take care of this. We will never let them out of jail. We will never let them see a judge. We won't let them have lawyers. We won't let them have any contact with their family. They won't have any contact with the International Committee of Red Cross, and they're housed far away from the United States, and it's a place where they can't reach you. It's a place where U.S. law actually doesn't reach them. It's a place where international law doesn't reach them. So you are all safe because George Bush and Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney are taking care of it." That's what they told us. And you will all remember September 11th. I mean, I was in New York. Sarah Barnett, my colleague, was in New York. September 11th. It was a horrible, horrible time. And at the time that the first men were being brought to Guantanamo, you could still smell the smoldering ruins of the World Trade Center. Every time the subway door opened, the smell would come in. Every time you walked out, the smell was there. There were National Guard people on the streets of New York City. It was a time of great fear. And it was a time, I submit to you, that Donald Rumsfeld, George Bush, Dick Cheney, and all of those guys saw a moment. And the moment that they saw was, this is a time of great fear. And the gap, that in order to fill the great fear gap, we need to come up with great power. And that's what they did. George Bush, very early on, passed forth an executive order that gave himself, the president, the power to detain virtually anyone for any reason, as long as he thought that they had a connection to Al-Qaeda or they had a connection to the Taliban. They didn't have to have a direct connection. They could support Al-Qaeda or the Taliban, which means that you could know somebody who knows somebody who gave money to somebody who knows somebody who's in the Taliban, and that would give George Bush enough power to pick you up and detain you. And that's exactly what they did. Let me just throw one concept out. George Bush used to talk incessantly about bringing the terrorists to justice. This Guantanamo has never been about justice. That is not why it existed. That's not what they did there. And in fact, all of the litigation that we've been doing has really exposed what it really is. What Guantanamo is, and what Guantanamo was a place to put people so that the US government could conduct mass intelligence gathering on Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, mostly on Al-Qaeda. They knew that there were terrorists out there, but they didn't know who the terrorists were. You'll remember, shortly after September 11th, there was a mass roundup of Arab, South Asian, Muslim people here in the United States. You remember that they created a special registration program for immigration for people, because you had to register if you were from certain countries because they didn't know who the terrorists were. Well, they did the same thing in the United States that they did around the world. And what they did in Afghanistan, for example, in order to get people to send to Guantanamo, they would drop these leaflets from helicopters, from military aircraft. And the leaflets would fly. And in fact, Donald Rumsfeld said that the leaflets right now, he's on television, they're falling from the sky like snowflakes in December in Chicago. And the leaflets would say, you will have more money than you could ever imagine. Your family will be taken care of. All you need to do is turn people over to US forces. And so in Afghanistan, we know, Afghanistan is not an Arab country. So what did the people in Afghanistan do? The first thing that they did was they looked around and they said, well, where are all the Arabs? Every time that they saw an Arab, they would turn the Arabs over to the US forces, because of course if you were Arab in Afghanistan, you had to be Al-Qaeda. The second thing that they did, as we also know from Afghanistan, is that there are, for generations, for centuries, have been rival clans and warlords. They started turning each other in. To just give you an example, there was one gentleman who had been in Guantanamo for a period of time. He was released and he found his way back to Afghanistan. And when he got back to Afghanistan, he found his way to his house. And when he opened the door of his house, the man who had turned him in had been living in his house the entire time that he had been detained in Guantanamo. And that's the type of thing that went over. So let me just tell you this. Most of the men, there were 779 men that had been in Guantanamo. The vast majority of the men have had no connection to terrorism, no connection to Al-Qaeda, no connection to the Taliban, and have not raised arms against the United States. That is something that if you take nothing else away from the discussion, that is the piece that you need to know. And when we get to the part where we're hearing from some of these men, the deep sensitivity, the deep longing, the people who have been in jail for such a long period of time that are writing about the sky, that are writing about their lives that could have been, you need to remember that it has always been the case that the government has known that they've had the wrong people in Guantanamo. When we filed the first habeas corpus petition, it was 1 month after the first 20 men were brought over, we realized that when George Bush was saying all of this stuff, that you just can't do that in the United States. There is this thing called the Constitution. Within the Constitution, there is the first article. The first article says, habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless it's a time of rebellion or insurrection. And everybody knows that this is neither a time of rebellion, nor is it a time of insurrection. So under what circumstances can a president throw somebody in jail, or anybody, throw somebody in jail, throw away the key, never give them a trial, never let them see a judge? So we filed the habeas corpus petition. And when we did that, we tried to reach out to a whole range of legal organizations to help us, but nobody really wanted to touch it. In fact, it was difficult to even get law firms to do it. We had a difficult time. We had to file these cases in Washington, D.C. We couldn't get a law firm to walk the papers across the street to the courthouse to file them in those early days. But we filed them, and we had a 2-year-long battle between 2002 and 2004, the first Supreme Court decision in a case called Rasul versus Bush, where the Supreme Court said, oh, these men in Guantanamo actually do have a right to go to U.S. courts. But for the 2 years between 2002 and 2004, the government, U.S. government, never once, not once, gave or confirmed the names of the men that were in Guantanamo.